Hey everybody, it's Mike from ProductionCrate, and today I'm actually going to show you guys how to download almost any one of our characters and bring it into Unreal Engine. If you download any one of these biped characters and these humanoid characters, it should work with what I'm about to show you guys. So I'm going to use a superhero guy, but you could use Scuba Man or Cyborg Model, whatever you want. I'm going to go ahead and download Superhero Male. Once you've downloaded that, this is what you should get in the folder. In this particular character, we have two different versions. So for Unreal, we want to use this one that doesn't say UDIMs. And inside we're gonna have an FBX and then a folder with a bunch of textures. Now this guy comes with a cape. Just to keep it simple, I'm gonna open up in my modeling program and delete the cape. I can show you guys how to do cloth in Unreal in a different video. Okay, so I've got him here in Maya, and this cape here is totally optional. It's a separate object. So for this video, I'm just gonna go ahead and trash it. And let me just re-export him, and I'll just replace the old one. All right, now I've loaded up Unreal. For this tutorial, I'm gonna be using Unreal Engine 5. It's experimental and beta right now, so if you don't have it or you don't feel like using it, that's totally fine. This tutorial will work exactly the same in version 4. So I'm gonna go ahead and launch Unreal 5. And when you get to this preset window, we're gonna use the game preset called Third Person. This will actually work with the top-down version too, but you might just have to change some of the naming conventions. If you're experienced with Unreal Engine already, you'll know how to do this. So I'm just gonna name my project. All right, so I'm loaded up here in the third person template. You'll notice that I've deleted the walls that come with the project, and I've made this ground a little bit bigger because we're gonna make our character run really fast. I wanna give him some room, but everything else should be default, how you guys see it. Quick note, if you're using version 4, you'll probably see a window down here at the bottom. If you're in version 5, you don't see it. The hotkey to have it pop up is Control Space. And if you don't like pressing that over and over, then you can just hit Dock and Layout and it will stay there. So whatever feels more comfortable for you. So what we want to do is we want to just basically replace this default robot character with our superhero character. So I'm going to go here, I'm going to go into the content folder, and I'm going to make myself a new folder. So if you right click over here, I'm going to make myself a new folder just for the superhero. So new folder, and I'll name it superhero. So inside the superhero folder, we can start importing our assets. So I'm going to click on import right here. And I want to go into the folder where I saved that FBX and just import that. So when this comes up, the default settings should be fine. I'm just gonna hit import all. Now this character is already rigged using the Mixamo skeleton. If you have a character that isn't rigged yet, then it's best to take that up to Mixamo first and let it auto rig. But all of our humanoid characters are already rigged using Mixamo. So with this character, you'll see that it loaded a whole bunch of things. The main things we need to pay attention to are the model itself, and then we have what looks like a copy of the model, but it'll say physics asset, and then we have the skeleton, and then any materials attached to the character. So this character actually has a lot of materials, you can see here. We can try to organize this a little bit by making another folder for materials, and I'll just grab all of these spheres and all the textures too, and I'll move it to the materials folder. So we should end up with 3 objects and a materials folder. Now, if we double click here, we can see the model looking pretty good. And just to make sure that the rig is working, I'm gonna drag the physics asset out here into the scene. You can actually press play and he should collapse like a ragdoll. That shows you that the rig is actually working. So now we actually need some animations. Like I mentioned, he's already rigged with Mixamo. So if you go to Mixamo and upload your character, it'll just work. There's no setup to do it all. So I'm gonna pick a few different animations that we need. You wanna find a good idle animation for when he's not moving, and minimum you need a walk and a run. I'm gonna go a little bit more advanced. So you could also get walk and run in all 4 directions. So walk forward, walk back, run back, and then also left and right. And if you want to, you could also grab a jump animation or even a sprinting animation. One thing to take note of is when you grab your looping animations, like this walk right here, make sure that it has an in-place checkbox, and you want to make sure you check that so he walks in place like he's on a treadmill. Some of these don't have that, like this walk backwards arc, so this wouldn't be a good animation for this tutorial. I actually have a walk that I really like. I like the dwarf walk because it looks really confident. So he's walking. I'm going to make sure I press in place and download that. All right, so here's all the animations I got. Again, minimum, you just need idle, walk, and run, but I got walk and run in all 4 directions plus a jump. So let's go back into Unreal Engine and import those. So I created this animation folder to keep it organized. I'm gonna go over here to import, and I'm just gonna select all these FBXs that I got from Mixamo. And when this pops up, it's really important to uncheck import mesh because we already have the geometry. We just need the keyframes on the bones. Next step right here where it says skeleton. If you click on this, you can see that there's actually 2 skeletons in our project so far because the default white robot is there, and then we have the hero. So I want to associate it with my hero. Now this right here is rotate X. Sometimes these Mixamo animations come in sideways, so if that happens, just delete them and type in 90 right here. Make sure you press like to make this load faster. There we go. Okay, so here's all of my animations loaded. If you want to test it, you can just double click on one of them and you should see your character moving, walking in place. Before we can get him walking around in the scene, let's get the materials finalized. So if I go to the materials folder, you can see that it imported all the materials from the FBX and it imported the color maps, but it doesn't load all the other textures automatically. So let's do that really quick. I'm gonna go to import. I'm gonna navigate to the folder that downloaded, into the textures, and you don't want to import these EXRs. In this case, this character has a displacement map. That's not really good for games, so we don't want to import that into Unreal, but we can get all the other textures. So I'll just say select all, and then I'll deselect these displacement maps. Now it's asking if I want to overwrite the colors because I already had those. You can just say yes to all. Okay, so here's all of my textures. One thing you want to do, every time you import a material or a group of textures into Unreal, there's one thing you want to change about some of these. So I want to look for all the ones that say metal and roughness, and I'm going to hold down Control and just select any one that says metal or roughness. I'm going to right click on it and go to Asset Actions, Bulk Edit via Property Matrix. Basically, we just want to uncheck this sRGB. General principle with 3D rendering is you don't want to color correct roughness map or metalness maps, so we're just going to turn it off. Okay, so we have a lot of materials here. It's going to be repetitious, so I'm just going to do one, and then you guys can do the rest. It's just the same process for each material. So I'm going to double click on the body material, and we get this node-based editor. You can see the color map's already plugged in, so that's pretty cool. Now, a quick note about Unreal 5, I can just hit Control Space, and all of my textures pop up. So let's grab the other textures that are associated with my body material. I'll just drag and drop those on. And if you're not sure which map you're looking at, if you click here, you can see the name right there. So this one's the emissive map. I'm gonna grab RGB and drop it into emissive color. This one here is roughness. So I'll drop that into roughness. Blue one is normal map. And this one's metalness or metallic. Every time you finish a material, you always want to press save up here in the top left and then close the window. So you want to do that for all the other materials. There's one that's kind of unique here though. If we open up the eyeball, we can see that this one only comes with one map. It doesn't have a roughness or a normal or anything. It's just the color. But we do want to make it more shiny than it is by default. So I need to set my roughness to 0. If you're familiar with PBR rendering, you know that 0 roughness equals really shiny and then roughness of 1 equals not shiny at all. So I need to plug a little 0 into here so it's shiny. Now, one thing that's kind of confusing about Unreal is just understanding the terminology that it uses. So instead of searching for number, this doesn't make sense. You just have to kind of learn the grammar and the terminology that they use, the vocabulary. And that just comes with experience and practice. So I just happen to know that a number is a constant. So I'm going to search for a constant and just drag this 0 into roughness. And you'll see that the eyeball here is shiny now. Okay, so now our character's ready to set up in the scene. If I click on this little capsule with the white robot, I want to switch to our character. So over here where it says skeletal mesh, over here in the details panel, I'm going to switch from SK mannequin to the hero. So now there's our character inside the capsule. So if you downloaded a character and it's the wrong size, here's how you would fix that. Navigate to the folder over here called third person BP, which is short for blueprint. I'm going to go into the blueprints, and here's where the default character lives in the folder structure. If I double click on this guy, you may or may not see a video of him. Just click on viewport if you don't see it. Let's click on him here and do the same thing. I'm going to replace the hero, and now I could scale him if he's the wrong size. So you can press R for scale, and you can change the size of your character right here. So let's actually make him a little bit bigger. Notice that he's snapping, so I can't quite get the right size that I want. So to turn off snapping, you just click this little blue diagonal arrow. I can make him exactly the size that I want right there. And I'll hit compile and save. There we go. Okay, so now we need to get him animated, because if I press play and try to run around, he's just kind of floating. I'm sure you guys have seen this in a game when it glitches out, or maybe he's done. Maybe this is how you want your game to look. So there's a little bit of technical stuff that has to go on here. And the thing you have to remember is that this capsule, this pill-shaped thing, is your character. That's what the game considers to be your character. And the model of the dude is just a fancy attachment. So we need to measure how fast the capsule is moving, and it'll tell the superhero which animation to play based on how fast the capsule is moving. So I'm going to navigate to my superhero folder, and I'm going to right click right here, and I'm going to create two things. So right click, I'm going to go to animation, animation blueprint, and I'm going to associate this with my hero. And we'll call this AnimBP, animation blueprint _ hero. Let's create another thing here. I'm going to go to right click, animation, BlendSpace. Let's go with the hero. And I'm going to call this BSP, which is short for BlendSpace, hero. Okay, so now we got these two assets right here that's going to help the character move around. I'm going to double click on my BlendSpace. This is actually a really cool window right here. So you get this cool graph with a vertical axis and a horizontal axis. And you can do all kinds of stuff with this, but what we want to do is plug in our animations based on how fast the character's moving. The vertical axis is going to be his speed from 0 to his max speed. And then this is the direction he's facing from left to right. Let's actually name that so it's easier to see, because right now our axes are named none and none. So if I go over here to horizontal, let's change the name to direction. And on vertical axis, I'm going to call that speed. Now, your character can face 360 degrees, but we don't want to go from 0 to 360. We want 0 to be the center, and then it's 180 degrees to the right, and then minus 180 degrees to the left. So I'll do minus 180 for the minimum and 180 degrees for the maximum. So now this center line is 0 degrees. This is 180 degrees to the left, and then same thing for the right. Now for the speed, obviously your minimum speed is 0. The maximum is 600, and that's just because the game's already set up that way. It could be anything, but just by default with this template, it's 600, so we'll just go with that. Okay, so here's my list of animations from before. We'll start with what does he do when he's going 0 miles per hour right here at the bottom of the graph. Well, I'm gonna drag and drop my idle animation right there, and you can see he just starts playing the idle animation. What do I want him to do when he's going max speed in the forward direction? I want him to be running, so I'll drag my run direction, my run animation right here. And the cool thing is you can actually test this. You hold down Shift, you can actually blend between the two animations. And notice that it automatically kind of invents new animations when you're halfway in between. So you don't have to worry about blending between different poses. It'll do it for you. It's pretty cool. Now it looks a little weird when he's walking slow because he's not really walking, he's kind of half running. So that's why we downloaded our walk animation. In my case, it's dwarf walk. I've already played around with this a little bit, and I know that this dwarf walk looks best at about 150. So this is 0, 150, 300, and so on. But you can experiment by moving it up and down and seeing where it looks best. So there's a nice confident walk animation. And if he goes faster, he starts running. This is actually the bare minimum you need. So let me show you how to get this working in the scene. If that's all you need, you could actually stop the video there or just watch to learn. But once I get him walking in the scene, I'll come back and I'll add all these other animations. So let's hit save, and I'm gonna go into the animation blueprint now. So the cool thing about Unreal Engine is you can code your game without having to know a single line of code. It's a visual scripting program called Blueprints. So it's technically based on C++, but you don't have to know any of it. This is gonna seem really technical, but if you just follow step by step, it should work. So this node right here, if you think of the whole thing as like a big math problem, this is the answer. We have to write the math equation before it so the computer can determine which pose you should be doing at any given time. So I'm going to create something called a state machine. If you press tab, you can search. I'm just going to type in state machine, and I'll drop and plug it into there. Cool. Let's actually name this state machine. Let's call it Hero State Machine. Okay, I'm going to double click into the state machine. So pay attention to this top bar because we're getting nested deeper and deeper into these nodes. So the state machine is, think of it like a flowchart. Entry means when you press play, your character is going to go from the entry into the game into a state. So if you drag and drop this into nothing, it brings up the search. I'm going to say add state, and I'm going to type idle, walk, run. So basically, my character can only be in one state. If I double click into here, see how we're nesting deeper and deeper into these nodes? I'm going to grab over here in my asset browser, I'm going to grab my BlendSpace. This is what we just set up earlier. Let's drop it right there and plug it in and press compile. So now you can see he's idling. So the way this works is if I say my character's going, let's say 300 units per second, and then press compile, he starts walking. And if I type in 600 and press compile, now he's running. Now it's not a very fun game to have the player pause it every time they want to change the character's speed and type in a number. We need to create some logic so that the capsule is always updating at every single moment in time to tell the computer how fast he's running, and it'll update the animation in real time. So to do that, I'm going to go over to the event graph. So I'm going to create another little flowchart here. So remember what I said earlier. The capsule is the character, and the dude inside is just art. The game doesn't really care about that. The capsule is the character. So right now we're in the brain of our animation, our model, and we need to tell it to look at the capsule and figure out what it's doing. So I'm going to go drag this pin out into the empty space, and I'm going to search for cast to third person character. Remember earlier I said if you use a different template like the top-down character, it would be different. This is one of those times where you would need to change what you type. So if you're doing the top-down template, you would do cast to top-down character. Now the object is going to be get player character right there. So this right here is the capsule. We just called the capsule and said, hey, superhero man, pay attention to what the capsule's doing. And remember what our goal here is to come up with two numbers, which is direction and speed. So right here as the third person character, I'm going to drag this blue pin out and search for get velocity right there. And also get actor rotation. Perfect. So you might think we're done. Remember, we're looking for speed and direction, and you look here and you say velocity is speed and rotation is direction, so we're done, right? Kind of. Velocity means speed kind of in everyday terminology, but in math, it means how fast you're going and which direction. And so we need to kind of separate those two numbers out. So here's how we do that. I'm gonna drag this out. I'm gonna search for vector length, which is super smart science talk for speed. And then I'm also gonna go calculate direction. Perfect. Let's just plug this little purple dude into that purple dude, and we're actually done. I know that was really more technical than we usually go, but hey, it's necessary if we want to fight crime. So we've done the math. Now we just need to tell it to give us the answer. So if I grab this green one, I'm gonna go promote to variable, which is just a number. A variable is just a number. And I'll name this speed. And this one is direction. So I'm gonna promote to variable and call it direction. Quick tip about blueprints. If you ever see a node here with these little home plate little icons, it needs to have something plugged into it or it won't work. What you do is you just scroll back to the last one that has an execution pin, and you just plug it into the next one. And you can just string them together. It almost doesn't matter what order they're in at this point, just as long as they're plugged into something. So I'm gonna hit compile and save. I'm gonna go back to my idle walk run tab, and we've done the math, we just need to plug it in here. So notice down here I have these two new things called variables, speed and direction. I'm gonna grab this, say get speed, and plug it in here. So this little node is all of that math condensed down into one little icon, and it's going to constantly update and tell the computer what the character is doing. I'm going to hit compile and save. So he should work now. Let's close this window. Okay, last step before we can press play is to click on our character, go to the anim class, and choose our anim BP hero, our animation blueprint hero. And you can see he goes into the ready position. When I press play and start walking, he animates. So that's all you really need. That's the bare minimum. I'm gonna go a little bit more advanced and show you how to do the sideways animation right now. So if we go back into our content, double click on BlendSpace hero. Remember this graph, this is the speed vertically. Well, we have the direction axis right here. So I have the run forward at the top. Let's put the run left right here on the left at the top. And I'll put run right. And then down here we have the walking speed. Let's do walk left and walk right. And then you wanna put the backwards direction on both outside ends. So here's run backwards here at the top and walk backwards. And I'll do the same thing on the other side. If you hold down shift, you can test it out. So if I go vertically, he's gonna walk forwards. And then if I go to the left, you can see he's gonna start running to the left. If I go to the right, he goes to the right. And then if I go downward, he starts slowing down, but he's still walking to the right. So you get this really cool graph where you can make your character run in any direction. So always press save when you're done. Let's close the window. And if I press play, you might see that it doesn't feel any different. He doesn't really run sideways. That's because right now the character is set up to always turn the direction that he's moving, but we can change it so that he always faces the direction that your camera's facing. So if I do this, he'll be facing forward but running sideways. So let's do that really quick. It's really simple. I'm gonna click on him, and then over here, you scroll way down. I usually scroll down until I see these 3 boxes in a row, but if you want to double check, it's character movement rotation settings, where it says use controller desired rotation. I'll turn that on. And then I'll turn the orient rotation off and press play. So now he always faces the camera, and then he'll run sideways or run backwards. So let's do 2 more things. You notice that he can't really slow down, so what was the point of getting those walk animations? Let's create a button that will make him slow down and walk, and let's also create a button that will make him jump. If I go back to my content browser, I'm gonna search for the third person BP folder, into the blueprints folder, and here's the brain of our character. This is where the blueprint lives. Let's double click on that. So this is where we were before when we changed our character's size. If we go to the event graph, this looks really complex. You can just kind of ignore all this. This is the brain of the character that helps him move. What we're gonna do is scroll down to the bottom of this graph, just ignore all this stuff, and we're gonna create 2 new buttons. I'm gonna right click and search for right mouse. So what this is, this red node here is called an event. The event is when the player presses the right mouse button, something happens. When they let go of the right mouse button, something else will happen. What I want him to do is slow down to his walking speed, which is kind of arbitrary, but I picked 150. So I'm gonna go drag this out, and what you wanna look for is set max walk speed. If you don't see it pop up, there's this little safety checkbox called context sensitive. It helps prevent you from plugging in things that don't go together, but I'm just gonna uncheck that because I like to live on the wild side. And here's set max walk speed right here. So when I press the right mouse button, I wanna set my walk speed to 150. And when I release it, I wanna set it back to 600, which is the default. Now we have a problem. We set max walk speed, but it doesn't know which character should be changing because there could be multiple characters. So we need a target. That's really simple. It's right here. Just drag character movement and plug that into the target for both of them. And that's it. That'll make him slow down. Let's press compile and save, and I'll press play. So now he runs, but if I hold down the right mouse button, he slows down to his walk speed. And when I let go, he goes back up to his run speed, which is pretty cool. But now we have one last problem we need to solve. When I press spacebar to jump, he plays the walk animation. And that's because he's technically increasing and decreasing in speed, right? So we need to do something else for the jump. Let's go into our content browser. I'm gonna go to my superhero folder, back into my animation blueprint, and I'm gonna go into the event graph. And this is what we just did. Remember, this is where we determined speed and direction. I'm gonna determine one more thing, and that's, is the character falling? You just grab this blue pin and just type is falling. So now it's a binary checkbox. Is he in the air or is he not in the air? It'll return true if he's in the air. It'll return false if he's not. So let's create a little checkbox that changes automatically. I'm gonna go drag this red one out, drop it in an empty space, and click promote to variable. Now we did that before and it was green, but now it's red. So the difference is the green ones are called floats, which is just a fancy word for a number. Could be any number. The red ones are just true false statements. Is it true or not true? So that's why it's a different color. I'm gonna hit compile, and let's name this jump, or jumping with a question mark. I like to make it a question mark so I know it's a true or false statement, and we'll compile that. Notice that if I click on this, by default it's not checked because he starts on the ground, right? So we'll just leave it default false. But if the character's in the air, it will automatically become true and we can make him jump. Oh wait, you know what? I almost forgot the important rule I mentioned. See, this node has the little input. It needs to be strung together. Compile, save. Let's go back to our idle walk run, and let's go back to our hero state machine, and we're gonna create a new state, which is a jumping state. I actually have that jumping animation that I downloaded. It's actually a falling animation, and I'll drag and drop that out and call it jump state. You enter the game, he immediately goes into the idle walk run, and when I press spacebar, I want him to be able to go into the jump state. So we need to create a path from here to here, and this is the rule that allows it to go into that state, and we're gonna use that is it falling to let it go into the jump state. So I'll double click here. And remember, whenever you create one of those variables, it's accessible right here. So here's my jumping variable, jumping with a question mark, drop it, let's get jumping. And you could just plug it straight in, but that can cause problems. So I'm gonna do a little equals and plug that in. So if jumping is equal to true, then he can go into the jump state. Let's press compile and save. And we'll press play. So he moves around just fine. When he jumps, but notice he doesn't go back into the walking state. He just kind of does this, which is kind of cool, but not what we want. I think our players would probably complain that they paid $60 for this game and he doesn't even run around right. So let's fix that and then we'll be done. Go back into your animation blueprint, and I'm gonna go back into my state machine right here. So we have a rule that allows him to go into jump state, but he can't go back. So let's do the exact opposite. Let's drag it back here, double click on the rule. Here's my jumping node. Let's get jumping, search for equal, and plug it into here. So if jumping is equal to not true, this empty box means not true, then you can go back into the walking state. And let's press play. So he jumps and then he walks again, which is pretty cool. So now we have this character with some complex movement. He can walk, he can run, he can jump. And just as a quick teaser, notice these hallways. I've already got these loaded into the scene. These are actually from the store. If you go to RenderCrate and you search for sci-fi hallway or sci-fi corridors, you'll see these. We're actually currently in the process of getting them set up to run in Unreal Engine just by default. You'll notice they actually have functionality. The doors open and close, the lights turn green, and it'll close behind me. And some of them even have smoke and fire and cool effects like that. So look out in the future for that. So that's it. I know it's pretty complex, and it was our first Unreal video, so it might have been a little bit too much information to throw at you guys at once. So if you don't even want to do all that, we're actually gonna put this finished character on the store for you to download. You can just drop it into Unreal. You don't have to do any of that work if you don't want to. Let us know if you want more Unreal Engine content in the comments, and let us know if you're more interested in using Unreal for game development or for doing short films and cinematics and virtual production and that sort of thing. So if you end up downloading one of our characters and getting it working in Unreal Engine, don't forget to go over to our new Discord, and we actually have an Unreal Engine channel, and show us what you've got and make it awesome.